For most of his life, Chuck Norris built a reputation around discipline, restraint, and respect. He wasn't known for public feuds or dramatic outbursts, which is exactly why stories about conflicts tied to his name tend to attract attention. However, it's important to approach these narratives carefully. Many claims about Norris, naming people he couldn't forgive, are often exaggerated, taken out of context, or simply not supported by reliable sources. Norris himself has consistently presented a measured and respectful tone when speaking about others, even those he may disagree with. What does exist, though, are moments where differences in values, work ethic, or public opinions created distance between him and other figures in entertainment. These situations are less about personal grudges and more about contrasting personalities, beliefs, and professional approaches that didn't always align. Discipline as a personal code. To understand why certain conflicts are even discussed, you have to understand what discipline means to Chuck Norris. It isn't just a word he uses casually. It's a principle that shaped his entire life, from his time in the Air Force to his martial arts career, and eventually Hollywood. Norris has always emphasized preparation, respect for others, and commitment to one's craft. These values guided how he approached film sets, training, and even public life. So when people speculate about tensions between Norris and other actors, the common thread usually comes back to this idea of discipline. If someone worked in a way that felt chaotic or unstructured, it naturally clashed with his mindset. That doesn't automatically mean hostility, but it does explain why certain working relationships may not have developed further, or why he chose to keep his distance in some situations. Separating fact from online narratives. In today's digital world, it's easy for stories to grow beyond reality. Social media posts, edited videos, and viral scripts often present dramatic versions of events that sound compelling but lack verification. Claims about Norris openly criticizing or refusing to respect specific actors frequently fall into this category. In many cases, there is no credible interview, publication, or direct quote to support those statements. Instead, they are built from assumptions, anonymous sources, or completely fictionalized encounters. Norris, by contrast, has rarely engaged in public criticism of fellow actors. Even when discussing differences, he tends to keep his language measured and focused on principles rather than individuals. This gap between how he actually communicates and how stories portray him is where much of the confusion begins, making it important to approach such claims with a critical eye. Differences in work style in generations. Hollywood has always been a place where different generations and working styles collide. Actors come from varied backgrounds, training methods, and personal philosophies, which can naturally lead to friction. In Norris's case, his structured, disciplined approach may not always align with performers who prefer improvisation or a more fluid style. That kind of difference doesn't necessarily create conflict, but it can lead to misunderstandings or a lack of compatibility on set. Over time, these differences sometimes get reshaped into dramatic stories of rivalry or resentment. In reality, they are often just examples of people approaching their work in different ways. Norris's preference has always leaned toward consistency and focus, and when that wasn't present, he typically chose to step back rather than engage in confrontation. Professional respect over personal conflict. One thing that stands out when looking at Norris's career is his consistent emphasis on respect, even toward those he may disagree with. He has worked alongside a wide range of personalities, from highly disciplined martial artists to more unconventional actors. In most cases, he has chosen to highlight what he appreciates about others, rather than dwell on negatives. This doesn't mean he agrees with everyone, but it does show a clear boundary in how he handles differences. Instead of turning disagreements into public disputes, he tends to keep them private or address them indirectly through general statements about values. This approach has helped him maintain a reputation for professionalism, even in an industry where public feuds often generate attention. It also suggests that many of the more dramatic claims about personal animosity don't reflect how he actually operates. The role of media and public perception. Media narratives play a powerful role in shaping how audiences perceive relationships between public figures. A single comment, if taken out of context, can quickly turn into a headline suggesting a feud. Over time, repeated retellings can make those stories feel like established facts, even when they started as speculation. Norris's image as a tough, no-nonsense figure makes him an easy subject for these kinds of narratives. People expect strong opinions from him, so stories are often framed to match that expectation. However, his actual public statements tend to be far more measured. He has spoken about values like faith, discipline, and responsibility, but rarely targets individuals directly. Understanding this difference between perception and reality helps put many of these so-called conflicts into perspective. Political and cultural differences. Some of the more believable tensions associated with Norris come from differences in political or cultural views rather than personal disputes. He has been open about his beliefs and has used his platform to express them, particularly on issues related to faith, patriotism, and individual freedoms. In an industry as diverse as Hollywood, those views don't always align with others, which can create a sense of division. However, disagreement doesn't automatically translate into personal conflict. In many cases, it simply reflects broader cultural conversations happening across society. Norris has typically addressed these topics in a general way, focusing on ideas rather than individuals. While audiences may interpret these differences as personal feuds, they are often better understood as part of a larger dialogue about values and perspectives. The Bruce Lee misconception. One of the most persistent myths involving Chuck Norris is the idea of a rivalry with Bruce Lee. Their famous fight scene in Way of the Dragon created an image that audiences have held onto for decades. But in reality, Norris has consistently spoken with respect and admiration for Lee. They trained together, learned from each other, and shared a mutual appreciation for martial arts. The so-called rivalry exists more in the imagination of fans than in real life. Norris has even downplayed comparisons between them, emphasizing Lee's unique contributions and influence. This example highlights how easily narratives can take on a life of their own, turning collaboration into competition simply because it makes for a more dramatic story. Why these stories persist. Stories about conflict, especially involving well-known figures, tend to spread quickly because they capture attention. People are naturally drawn to drama, and the idea of strong personalities clashing fits that interest. In Norris's case, his reputation for toughness adds another layer, making such stories seem even more believable. But the persistence of these narratives doesn't make them accurate. In many instances, they continue to circulate simply because they are entertaining, not because they are true. Recognizing this helps separate genuine history from storytelling. It also reminds us that public figures are often portrayed in ways that emphasize drama over nuance, even when their real actions suggest something far more balanced. A legacy defined by principles, not feuds. At the end of the day, Chuck Norris's legacy isn't built on conflict or personal grudges. It's built on discipline, perseverance, and a consistent set of values that he has carried throughout his life. While differences with others may have existed, they were rarely the defining feature of his career. Instead, what stands out is his commitment to personal growth, professional integrity, and helping others through his work beyond entertainment. The idea of him holding on to widespread resentment doesn't align with the way he has publicly conducted himself over the years. His story is less about who he disagreed with and more about how he chose to live, focusing on principles that guided him through both challenges and success.